In the last couple decades, education has taken some changes from where we had currently been. There is such an emphasis in writing in the early grades. We've kind of had a departure from teaching handwriting explicitly. In the Common Core states, which is the majority of the United States, handwriting is only a standard that the teachers teach in kindergarten and first grade. Therefore, those kids are so young, if they're not constantly practicing and teaching it explicitly to kids, we have been developing a generation that has more and more handwriting issues. Also, technology is not necessarily helping because there's such a push to use computers and tablets in the classroom that it's another way handwriting is kind of getting lost in the shuffle. Some teachers believe that teaching spelling is less important than it used to be with spell check on computers. This is something that a lot of experts disagree with because you still have to get somewhat close to the word and the spelling on a computer for it to know what you are saying for spell check to even work. So this is a little bit of flawed thinking to think that we don't need to teach spelling anymore. One thing that they've also noticed, though, is kids with dysgraphia, they don't just struggle with handwriting, but often struggle with constructing sentences within the text as well. Very little research has been done with teaching handwriting on a computer. It's one of those subjects that they don't seem to go hand in hand together like maybe reading on the computer or doing math. But with the certain programs, teaching handwriting on the computer could be very successful, and this is what this research study was looked into. Writers with dysgraphia, sometimes react very well to the computer and they do a great job and it solves most of their writing problems. And other times they just still lack the motor control to be able to successfully use the keyboard and to type, and it doesn't help them as much as teachers might think. Dysgraphia often causes students to have trouble recognizing and forming legible letters, so therefore it's limiting their working memory, and they're spending so much cognitive memory just on the formation of the letters and the writing the extra letters that they have less working memory to focus on the spelling and just how to compose a sentence. The University of Washington did a study, and they found that many third graders with handwriting issues are just given accommodations to use a computer. While this solves the issue for some, it doesn't solve it for all kids. And the problem still stems from there's a lack of instruction happening with teaching handwriting. The level of support, there's just not a lot of research done with if they can use computers to help students learn handwriting. The research that the University of Wisconsin did wanted to see if third graders and up could still develop better handwriting by doing RTI on a computer. This study, they took three different parts of it. They evaluated their handwriting, their spelling, and their sentence composition when they worked on this study. They chose students from 4th to 9th grade, and they were recruited by flyers and mail. They did parent questionnaires, they did student interviews and assessments, and they wanted to confirm that before they started their study that these students had persistent handwriting issues, spelling issues, and oral or written syntax problems. If the students had ADHD or other concerns, they were not automatically eliminated from the study. They specifically tried to get students with dysgraphia at 2 to 3 standard deviations below the normal handwriting measure. But they also tried to get students that did not have severe reading problems. So they wanted their reading to be close to on level and just the handwriting be the issue. They used computer feedback platform. They used a program called Wise Words software, and it was configured to to present them different material based on kids' answers. So as they were working on the study, if they got certain things wrong, it would give them the program would go in a different direction than maybe if some kids got those things right and got something else wrong. So it was very tailored to the student based on their answers to give them the exact pinpoint instruction they needed that might not always happen as well in a classroom. The one area that they focused on was handwriting. The stimuli was presented verbally and visually. They did this study on touchscreen iPads, and they also had keyboards connected to them for certain things. They presented print and cursive letters, and they taught capital letters. They really focused on teaching the capital letters at the beginning of sentences and where else you need to have capital letters with proper nouns, etc. The computers recorded how the letters were formed, and when the students traced outside the lines, they were given feedback. So sometimes the computer just showed them stuff to trace, and other times it would say, in their headphones, write the letter I, and they would have to write it on their own. And the computer took all kinds of graphic details and feedback on their handwriting based on how it looked and what their errors were. Then, once again, handwriting lessons were altered. If they were really good at one letter, it kind of skipped giving them to that letter. If they really needed work on more other letters, it gave them more work on those letters. The students recorded their scores each time, and they had little graphs after they were done with their session to motivate them to continue to improve and where they could see their growth. The next area that the program worked in was spelling. Same stylus and writing techniques were used in the spelling portion of the study with these kids. The study with spelling taught them how to count syllables, taught them word transformations with suffixes and prefixes. It was very multisensory. They had to listen through the speakers with their ears. They had to read with their eyes. They had to name stuff verbally with their mouth, and they had to write stuff with their hand with the stylus on the iPad. Many different activities were presented, and it gave them many different ways to show their knowledge or for the computer to pick up on where they struggled more. And the students, once again, when they were done with their sessions, they graphed it on an RTI chart to look at their progress on this one as well. The third category that the study did was talking about composing text. Same stylus and iPad were used again, and this part of the intervention did composing words and sentence structures. They also really focused on writing sentences that related to previous sentences written by the students, and it also focused on expanding their ideas. Often a student has a good idea, but their next sentence just kind of takes this idea in a completely different direction. It was really pinpointed on having a central idea and writing about that idea and not just kind of bouncing all over the place with their topics. The results of these studies was 12 out of the 13 students with dysgraphia showed improvement in handwriting, word spelling, and sentence composition. Basically, they were very excited to see that this proves that students beyond third grade can make improvements in their handwriting, and computers can be very useful. For some reason, just a lot of people think, once kids get to fourth grade, that is their handwriting and they can't fix it. But this study showed a very good outlook for kids that they can continue to practice and work on their handwriting and see results. The computers were very effective. They wanted to do more studies just with older students, just kind of to give a handwriting refresher. Oftentimes they just kind of forget how stuff can look, and they think that the computers interventions could be really good for upper elementary to even middle school to just give handwriting refreshers to kind of just practice like a car gets a tune-up, just to practice specific things. And the way the software pinpointed exactly what they need, they wouldn't really waste their time per se, because it wouldn't focus on the stuff that they were already good at. It would kind of just focus on key areas that could help the students. The study limitations were they realized more demographics need to be addressed. Most of the kids that participated in the study had college graduate parents, and they had a higher socioeconomic class of kids in this study because they kind of just put flyers out, and most of the parents who wanted to participate had adequate transportation and time and means to get their students to the study every week. So they would like to do some more research on the lower socioeconomic classes to see if they had the same results there. Instruction was given once a week for 5 months to see these results. They are interested in doing some more studies to just do more times a week, or also just a lengthier study on just if they continue to work with these same kids, how much better it would prove a year down the line or 2 years down the line, and at what point would their handwriting reach I don't want to say just a normal on level status, if that was possible, and how close they could get to that. They also are wanting to see if there could be a hybrid approach somehow. So instead of doing all of this online, maybe some teacher intervention with this, and to see how that affected the results. They were also wanting to know, how does a computer impact writing anxiety? Because a lot of kids just have an anxiety to write, to do writing, and they thought it would be interesting to also kind of shift out to see if the computers ease their anxiety or if it didn't really help in that area. And that was basically it. So exciting things. I think a lot of teachers would be more on board if they could, during some downtime, throw a kid on the computer for 30 minutes to do these interventions. This would make it where the teacher herself or himself did not have to be necessarily an expert at these. And I think in the elementary classroom setting, there's times where they could find center work or something to put these kids on these interventions that needed it, and not necessarily do a whole class instruction on this. So it's really exciting things happening and coming from this, and it's exciting to know that some people are realizing this is a problem, and that our current classroom situations are not always addressing this. So these studies like this are giving us more options potentially in the future to help these dysgraphic kids. Thank you.